My name is Kelvin, and I'm 61 years of age, and I took voluntary early retirement about 5 years ago now. Since that time, I've been involved in various One Community activities, and including amongst those has been the voluntary visiting scheme that I've done now since it was started a couple of years ago. Why do I do it? Well, I feel it's worthwhile and rewarding in equal measures. It's something for me to be able to give back to the local community. I do so much like that I can give as much or as little time to it that suits me. I've obtained over the period I've been doing it new skills, of course skills of active listening and positive mentoring, but also unexpected things. For example, I've become an expert at doing jigsaw puzzles, and also I've learnt new card games as well. I've also become very interested in dementia and Alzheimer's issues, and I've read several books on these matters. Importantly, I do feel that doing this type of work makes me feel really appreciated, and this is such a good feeling. During the time I've been doing the scheme, I visited both male and female clients with physical and mental issues, and what they both have in common is the fact of social isolation and living alone. For example, there was one gentleman who his socialisation was due to his very strong religious views, and we found common ground by actually playing card game together, which he benefited from, and it was nice to have his company. Also, I've had a female client whereby she was surprisingly social isolated in the fact that her family lived close by, but in fact she was very rarely visited by her family, and so she did so much benefit from a friendly chat over a cup of tea each week.
I'm Myra Spreadbury, and I lost my husband 2 years ago and found I had quite a lot of spare time because I've always been a working girl, I'm never still, and to suddenly go from nursing a husband to having not much to do was a bit of a strain, bit of a shock. So I thought I would try and find some work to do. I went to the doctors to find out if they could advise me on anything. They put me in touch with Hayley in One Community. That's a laugh for a start. And we've come through this, and Hayley's given me 4 or 5 different clients to see, and most of my clients are partially blind, which I feel is good, and I know Hayley felt because my own mother was blind that it would be perhaps the right people for me to see. And I love going to see them, because when you go to see them and they open the door and, oh, it's lovely to see you, and you do get the feeling that sometimes you're the only person they see, certainly that day, sometimes 2 or 3 days. I think the visiting scheme is very important for the people around this area and further afield if we could get enough people to visit. I feel it's such a help to these people. Most of the people I visit are in their 90s, very lonely, spend hours on their own, and they just love somebody to come, and their face lights up when you go in and you sit and talk, and they want to talk, and they ask you about your life and you find out about their life. Usually there's a cup of tea or a cup of coffee somewhere along the line, but they're lovely, and I just feel so strongly that it's helping the loneliness. My own mother used to say to me, I wish somebody would just come and talk to me or listen to me, because I spend hours on my own. And this is really what made me think about starting this work.
It rescued me from a very, very, very dark place. I was desperate when it came about. I can't tell you the difference it's made to me. Myra is so wonderful. We chat and takes me all through it, and I'm a different person now since Myra's been coming to see me. Forever grateful to her. And it's a wonderful service. I just think it's a comfort, especially when you're on your own like I am now. My family are all abroad or in Scotland, which is like being abroad. If you just feel there's somebody there anyway that you can phone, and it's so very important. It makes such a difference. Partner, you cannot explain the feelings and the sense of loss and the feelings of being lost in the world, especially if your family are not around. It's a terrible, lonely place. And to have the comradeship of somebody coming that understands that. It's not just an ordinary loneliness, it's a deep loneliness because you've lost half of yourself.
I'm Hayley Hamlet from the Visiting Scheme with One Community. We recently received a letter from a loved one who had the visiting scheme for her mother. I'd like to read you the letter. My mum was visited regularly by one of your visiting scheme volunteers. The visits occurred during a very difficult time in her life when she was suffering with terminal lung cancer. It was a lonely and scary time for my mum, and I wanted to express my deep gratitude since my mum's passing. The volunteers' visits were a real tonic for my mum. Their cheeriness, generosity and love of a good chat was everything akin to my mum's own personality when she had been fully well. Seeing them each week for a cuppa and a chat helped my mum feel upbeat and took away from her everything that was going on just for a little while. I would be very grateful if you would share this with all your volunteers so they know how valuable they all are. What I have said doesn't go far enough to explain how grateful I am, as was my mum. Keep up the valuable work.